You can think about confidentiality as a legal concept and a value and core principle of professional social service work. We're not going to, in this training, look at HIPAA because that's a huge training in and of itself. It's important the legal ramifications of confidentiality are clearer in one sense and more complicated in another sense, but more important certainly than they used to be. But really just looking at the value, essentially. And I think especially for people who are not familiar with doing social service work, there are two things in that sense that we need to pay attention. One is when we say confidentiality means only essential information is collected, that the essential information is the key, that we not get more than we need, and that that information be safeguarded to the degree possible. So when we talk about only essential information is collected, that we're really talking about files and case notes, information that's factual, accurate, objective, essential to the clients being served. Keeping information, on clients that are served over a period of time is important. One of the reasons it's important is that there's turnover in workers. And if there aren't records, you don't have that information. But the key is that when we write about people, that we're writing about actions and behaviors, not observations or judgments. Instead of referring to clients as alcoholics, there is a description that's written about when the person came to get services, inebriated, stumbling, falling into a chair. Instead of describing a client as unmotivated, document the appointments not met, deadlines not kept. And also, you can never be sure who'll be writing what you write down. I actually did some HIPAA training a couple of years ago for the state with a lawyer from Legal Services. And we were doing one in the Appleton, Green Bay area. And there had been a shelter that a nonprofit had run, but the organization that was taking it over, which was larger, was going through the files and procedures. It was out of a social service director's nightmare, all the things they did for which they were liable. And the files were just full of gossip, speculation about this and that, lots of thou shalt nots. In terms of talking about clients within the organization, you don't need informed consent. You don't need clients to give permission to talk to other people within your organization. But safeguards need to be maintained. One is to make sure that conversations about a client can't be overheard by others not directly involved in the case. The real issue here is what they call hallway consultation. Workers are busy. You're really busy. And there's somebody that you're seeing that you've either got questions about, or you think somebody else on staff or in the Corps may have information that would really be useful in terms of they may know a resource, and you happen to meet in the hallway. And the tendency is just to ask the question then, and the difficulty maybe, given the nature of the hallway, is that other people can hear that. And then even within that, in talking with people, that you share only the information relevant to the supervision consultation. The difference between what's interesting and what's important. Are there things that we can do that will minimize that, in terms of placement of chairs and placement of the office, how people's names are called out? Are you using first names and last names? The problem with a full name is then everybody in a crowded waiting room knows that they're there. Talking about clients outside the organization, you share it only when there's informed consent. Information about clients cannot be shared with family members, friends, etc. And this is kind of a professional value, but it's also tough. I was thinking about this as it relates to my wife. We've been married for 28 years, I think, and generally I talk to her, about most things that are important. And when I was working with parents at a shelter, there were at least 2 occasions where people that she knew came into the shelter, with their kids. One was somebody that I think she knew through Girl Scouts, another time through the PTA at our kids' school. If I had heard that one of them had been in an auto accident, for example, some other kind of misfortune, I would have shared that information. Not a close friend, but she wanted to know that, but I couldn't let her know. Wisconsin was one of the relatively late states to get licensure for social work. It happened, I think, in 1995. And the first person to lose her license and to get fined for that was a woman who came home one night and told her husband about one of the clients that she had met with by name, and her husband, who sold cars, went to work the next day and told his coworkers, and within 24 hours it had gotten back to the woman, and losing the licensure made sense. And talking about clients in general, not include identifying information about specific clients, former clients. Milwaukee's a small town. If Debbie was talking in general, for example, about the kinds of people that the Salvation Army serves and was talking about a specific client, not by name, but with enough detail, conceivably there might be someone who could do that. As a social work professor, one of the nice things about moving from Georgia to Wisconsin was I figured I was 800 miles away and I could talk about clients, not by name, but with enough specifics, and the chances were there wasn't anybody up here that was going to know the folks in Statham, Georgia that I was talking about. Informed consent, confidential information from a client about a client can be shared with other organizations only with valid consent. Informed consent forms should be understandable, not sign here. Should describe which organization would have the right to records. And you either need to do a separate informed consent for each organization or have a policy, and I know some organizations do this, in which you limit generally you can have a pick sheet in terms of if you normally would share information from 6 or 8 organizations that they're doing that, then a space for other. People can check the box on which they want the organization shared, and then when you fax the informed consent sheet, take a good strong magic marker, something that's really broad, and cross out everything except the organization in which you're faxing it to. Sending an informed consent sheet to an organization that shows which other organizations that the client has given informed consent to is sharing more information than you need to. If one of those is a mental health agency, you're really conveying that information. But if all someone gets is a fax that shows that organization, then that's okay. Because the difficulty is that could be lots of pieces of paper the person would sign. And describe which information was shared, give the client the opportunity to delimit which information is shared, and it should be time limited, often for 6 months. If it's for a program, if it's like a shelter where people can be there for 90 days, it should be for 90 days. Generally 6 months is a good time period for that. Keeping client information private. Hard copies of client records should be kept overnight in locked file cabinets. As I understand HIPAA on this, the only time in which that can be different is if you have file cabinets in a room, often like a large closet, that's nothing but file cabinets. And then if the room is locked all the time, that's okay. But it has to be a room that's single usage, where it's nothing but files. Workers should not leave written records on their desks or in other visible places where others could see them. One worker that I talked to had a boss that was a real stickler for this. He said, I don't want anything on your desk at all. And if you're gone at all, everything needs to be locked up. So everyone they just cleaned out a drawer where people usually keep files in the desk. They just had that empty, and they would just open it up, throw everything in there, close it, lock it, and do that. I'm not sure that needs to be done. What it does call for is that any time you're away from your desk for any period of time at all, that the records need to be someplace that's off your desk where no one can see them, where they're just not visible to anybody walking by the desk. And if anybody comes up to talk, then you need to be moving to make sure that there's nothing visible. It's not a terrible thing, probably not the thing I'm most proud of, but I realized when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade that I could read upside down just about as fast as I could read right side up. You may run into people, coworkers who are like that. And then for information systems, be sure others can set the computer screen, set a screensaver to come on after a short period of inactivity. I don't think 30 seconds is even too short for that in case anybody can see that as they walk by. It's just a matter of clicking a space bar or a mouse to get the screen to come back on again. If you're on any kind of an information system and you walk away from your desk, it's a good idea to log off and then come on back again.